Okay, it's been a little bit since I've gotten political. For the past little while, I have retreated to more of a labor unionist approach, and my goal with these videos has been to stir the masses and give the working people the confidence to stand up to their corporate overlords. With this video, I want to give people an idea as to what the end goal of the working class struggle should look like, as well as discuss alternatives to labor unions. As I'm sure many of you have noted, I see the forming or joining of labor unions and unionizing your workplaces as a short-term goal. Most people that have been with me since at least my expose on Vosh know about me is that I am a socialist, which, contrary to what capitalist propaganda will have you believe, is a system in which the working people have common ownership of the means of production. It's not when the government does stuff, or when no food, or free money, or whatever dribble the media is peddling. If socialism is when the government does stuff, then every country should be considered socialist. Although I personally don't think socialism as being when the US government needlessly raises taxes on the working people, or revokes food stamps, or denies unemployment benefits, or erases a right to do something, or passes a law that restricts the working people from pursuing their free will. The no food talking point, often coming from countries that the US and or other imperial core nations have sanctioned into starvation and economic ruin for being socialist, or countries that have a poor economy or an ongoing famine that capitalist nations point to and call socialist, regardless if they've researched whether or not the starving country's economy is a socialist build. See the social democratic Venezuela. The free money talking point being complete nonsense when coupled with the previous talking point, but that conservatives like to use when referring to welfarists and social democrats. Those socialists are not opposed to the idea of working people being handed out free money, especially by those who have more money than the average common worker could make in 1,000 lifetimes. We believe in more of a universal basic needs guarantee rather than a universal basic income. A lot of people might have deduced that I'm a socialist judging by the imagery and colors that I use, as well as my vocabulary. I've argued for the abolition of private property and referred to the working class as the proletariat. So I hope this isn't a surprise, but if it is, I hope I was at least able to make you think before thumbing down and morally condemning me in the comments and unsubscribing. Even just labor unions are fought to the bloody end by the elite, but I hope my agitation so far has not been in vain, and people have had their eyes opened or are even organizing right now because of me. Although I understand if some people support unionizing, but feel that it is infeasible, either company-wide or just on the home front, and because either your co-workers genuinely don't believe unions have their best interest in mind, or you're working for a company like GameStop, and there really is no point in unionizing. Which brings me to mass resignation as an alternative to unionizing. Companies that are likely to collapse within a 3-year time frame should be abandoned. Companies that are failing to see record profits, let alone are running out of money, would pay their workers nothing if they could, but opt to pay the minimum wage so as to not accidentally induce mass resignation or incur the wrath of the revenue service, which siphons tax dollars from the working people for the government to use sponsoring coups against third world budding left-wing governments such as Niger. A mass resignation movement can only be justified against a failing business. A company cannot expect to sustain itself if it cannot adapt to an evolving market, instead opting to cut wages, withhold overtime pay, revoke full-time benefits as well as employee discounts, and it especially cannot expect to survive if it harms its customer base through methods such as discontinuing rewards and discounts and gouging prices. Mass resignation against a thriving business becomes a necessary next step when attempts to unionize have failed, or agreements have been breached, or a unionized store is either closed down, or disagreements between employee and employer prevent a contract from being renewed. It is a direct frustration of the working people for the employer to deny or stifle negotiations. Where mass resignation against a company like GameStop would only be inducing the inevitable, mass resignation from a company like Walmart would be a trump card for the working class against a company that brainwashes and abuses its employees and imports goods from countries where extreme slavery is practically legal and is used against women and children. I use the term extreme slavery to denote the form of slavery that exercises physical abuse and dehumanization similar to that which black slaves were subject to in the 15th through 19th centuries. This extreme slavery is opposed to what we know as wage slavery, wherein we are at least being paid currency, but in most cases we are only a middleman between corporation and government, as our wages, if not spent back at our retail workplaces on groceries, is paid to the landlords and the revenue service. And by the time our groceries are bought and our bills and taxes are paid, we have exceedingly little or nothing to spend on ourselves. That's assuming you can even afford groceries now, as inflation continues to worsen, and food shortages seem to be a constant threat, and this gives companies even more of an excuse to gouge prices. But let's say you don't wish to cast your job away, but would still like to disrupt the workflow. An alternative to mass resignation would be strike. strikes and walkouts. Organize a day or a couple of days, or perhaps go on strike indefinitely. Organize protests with your coworkers to demand better wages, working conditions, and benefits, and demand an end to union busting. A local strike may backfire even if the individual store caves. The corporation may step in and close the store down. If a company-wide effort is made and strikes occur across a certain country, or perhaps even internationally, the corporation will have no choice but to loosen their grip on the working masses and ease up their exploitation. But now let's say you are looking for employment, either to move on from your current job or are currently in need of one, like me. But you see openings for jobs that you know won't be a good deal. This can be because of horrible working conditions that the company is known for, as well as the mistreatment of its employee base, low wages, no benefits, no job security, controversial business practices, or even political stance. To go against a company from outside of the company, you would boycott the company. You can boycott the company by not selling your labor to them. By refusing to work for a company, you narrow their search for employees. In addition, not purchasing any goods sold through them will also hurt their sales, even if the difference from you is negligible. I do what I like to call an ascended form of boycotting businesses that I don't like, which is speak out against their exploitation and abuse of their employee base, and any financial abuse of its customer base that is taking place. I highlight employee dissatisfaction, and I expose corporate lies in an effort to 1. Stir the proletariat, and 2. Discourage customers and potential new hires from doing business with the company. Indeed, it is not only the workers who are exploited through subpar wages for even the best work, but the customer base, to which the company sells junk imitating its product for full price. Products that are meant to last years last only a couple of months due to planned obsolescence. Planned obsolescence is when a product is designed to be intentionally flawed and break in a shorter time than it should, so as to maximize profits for the company. And here I never thought I would stick up for customers, but I still find it sickening when Karen blames the worker and not the company for a false advertising campaign, or is acting unreasonably over mask mandates during a global pandemic, and then proceeding to verbally abuse and threaten people whose lives are already hard enough. So mass resignation, strikes, boycotting, and negative press are some alternatives to unionizing your workplace, although if I have left anything out, please tell me in the comments below, as these campaign methods are just off the top of my head. But while rebelling against the slave drivers is all well and good, we can't just achieve progress in our workplace and be done with it. Even if we unionize, or jump ship from a collapsing business, or strike our way to better working conditions, or boycott a company into the ground, we have to always look towards the future. If a unionized store closed down, the people that organized and led the charge will be back to square one when they find new work. Who's to say that when GameStop inevitably files for bankruptcy, that there won't be a digital successor that, despite being more successful, is just as greedy and just as exploitative of their workforce? Does boycotting one company make others pay more than minimum wage? The labor movement, while mostly social democratic in nature, seeks to answer those questions. What the labor movement seeks is a raise in the federal minimum wage to at least $15 an hour, a reduction of full-time hours to 32 hours per week, a 4-day work week, various improvements to working conditions, and legal repercussions for union busting. This might look good on paper, but is ultimately just bargaining with the capitalists. This is not the first time a labor movement came to be in the United States. Barely a century ago, the labor movement was engaged in the struggle for the 40-hour work week, the 5-day work week, better working conditions, the establishment of the minimum wage, and the right to form labor unions. Even if the labor movement of today succeeds, it'll only kick the can down the road another century before capitalists start squeezing everything out of the working class again. As wages stagnate, the work is almost impossible to cope with, employers mistreat their workers, and business owners come up with new ways to fight labor unions. What then? Will the working class initiate the fight for a 3-day, 24-hour work week? Will the minimum wage be stuck at $72.50 an hour, with inflation being so bad that there will be calls to raise it to $150 an hour, with some even calling for a $200 or even $300 minimum wage? Will we have to illegalize corporate intervention in the unionization process to finally see an end to egregious union busting? How many more times must we repeat this cycle until we've decided to hell with this? A lot of people dismiss socialism as a system that works in theory but not in practice. I am of the belief that it is in fact capitalism that works in theory but not in practice. Even a $7.25 minimum wage was inconceivable 100 years ago, and now that can't even afford a worker a 1-bedroom apartment. How many more times will the working class have to rise up and demand a better life from those that actively try to make it worse? Allowing such a small number of people to hold positions of power has made the lives of the commoners worse in so many ways. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. That is why I believe power belongs in the hands of the common people. No more bosses to scorn us for not working hard enough. Under capitalism, you work 4 hours to make money for yourself and 4 hours to make money for your CEO. This is what is known as surplus value, in which half or more of the value of your labor performed over X amount of time is siphoned off by the corporation and into the hands of the CEO. In socialism, this is replaced by what you might call surplus produce, in which you work 4 hours to produce goods for yourself and 4 hours to produce goods for those that cannot cannot produce goods for themselves, either because they do not possess the knowledge to perform the labor or because they are physically unable to perform the labor. From each according to their ability to each according to their need. It already sounds like a way better idea than someone else making money off of your work. Another thing I would like to note that has already been covered plentifully is that when socialists call for the abolition of private property, they are not supporting a system in which you are forced to share your toothbrush, your toilet, your bed, or pantry goods, or whatever have you, with whoever comes to your doorstep with such demands. They are referring to the collectivization of the workplace, as well as the returning of value from the CEOs that wrested from the workers' hands to those that worked for it. The terms seize the means of production and abolish private property are interchangeable. This sounds great, right? Some leftists don't think we should stop there, however. Vladimir Lenin, one of history's greatest revolutionaries, said it himself. The goal of socialism is communism. Communism is a system in which society is stateless, classless, and moneyless. Socialism is basically a midpoint between capitalism and communism. With communism, the state becomes unnecessary. Leadership is collective as the structure of the government begins to resemble that of a commune. It's probably why they called it communism. Maybe. I might be wrong about that. Classlessness is something that socialism already brings about, for the most part, as socialism is a system by which the proletariat already have the ultimate say, even if there's a level of pushback from the bourgeoisie, who, because they're in the minority, won't be able to influence the government even if they try to commit lobbying efforts. Money also becomes unnecessary under communism, as exchanging goods for currency is replaced by exchanging goods for goods. For example, one of your fellow proletarians has made a small wooden table and wants a value of, let's say, $60, or 60 points, or whatever measurement of value we would use in a communist society, if anything at all. You would be able to buy the table by giving him $60 worth of product, whether that's food, decorations, or something special like jewelry or antique items. He can then sell whatever you give him or keep it for himself. That kind of society, I feel, would be a satisfactory end goal. There is anarchism, but I tread lightly on that idea, seeing as how Vosh sees himself as an anarchist. I would almost go as far as to say that anarchism would just loop us around and put us back in social democracy, or worst case scenario, feudalism. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I have much to learn, not just about anarchism, but communism and socialism as well still. Please do not be afraid to let me know if I have the wrong idea on anything, or perhaps even this whole video. I am always willing to further my knowledge and understanding of leftist theory and politics. Discussion and discourse are encouraged. For the Social Democrats and labor unionists in my audience, I hope I was able to give you some food for thought and enlighten you on the politics of Marxism, but if not, I recommend reading Marx, I recommend reading Lenin, and I also recommend checking out some videos from other left-wing creators. In particular, Second Thought is how I came to realize that my suspicions of capitalist projections against socialism genuinely made sense and wasn't just my brain trying to fool me into supporting something worse than wage slavery. Second Thought gave me hope that life can be better. I suppose I'll let you get to that and sign off on this video. If you liked hearing what I had to say, please be sure to click thumbs up, share the video far and wide, leave your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe for more content like this, and click the bell to get notified when I upload. You'll be helping this channel grow. Also, I am accepting financial contributions through Patreon, so if you would like to help me stave off poverty, you can do that just by pledging $3 a month. As a thank you for that, you'll get exclusive access to my artworks, as well as some content that didn't make it to the main channel, and some music, which I was going to produce a black metal album for release later in autumn, but I ended up giving up on that when I found myself unable to come up with anything worthwhile. I'm still trying to save up brain power for the next time I produce material for my thrash metal project. But anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll be back next week for another video. Bye guys.